Hey, and welcome to yet another episode of the Blue Screen Brothers. My name is Alex, and together with Olav, my brother in arms, we have been fortunate enough to get another visit by Chauncey. Hey.
Hi,
Good
Chauncey.
morning, everyone.
Yeah.
How are we doing?
Doing good. And just for the new listeners, just who are you and what do you do?
That's a great question. So Chauncey Larsen, I work on the Surface Commercial Technical Marketing team. Actually, I would say it's the Surface Commercial Continuous Innovation Marketing team. But our role is to really, I think, build stories and understanding around the various ways that Surface kind of serves the bigger platform for Microsoft. So think about things like security and IT pro management, and of course, AI. So which is, I think, what you've invited me on here to talk about.
I'm not sure if our listeners or if anyone kind of caught the latest AI wave. There's this thing called Copilot PC, and AI on devices, and Olav and myself got started talking on what value does the operating system give to the end user, because most of what you do happens in the browser or maybe in a application. So
and special today when Windows 10 are no longer with us, or it have a grace period for a year. We started the discussion, does the OS really matter because you are doing everything in a browser, right?
So I said that's a valid point. Do you need to move away from Windows 10 to a Windows 11, or should you go Chromebook? And I said, well, the new Windows PCs, the AI features built into Windows, those give me value on top of just being an operating system. So, Chauncey, any chance of giving us kind of the brief tour of what Recall was announced and where kind of moved today?
Yeah, oh gosh, when was that? What year am I in? 2024, I think, right? So Recall was announced when we announced our Copilot PC standard or category, if you want to call it that. And it was announced in preview at that time as well. And so when we went into preview, I think we got a lot of really good feedback from from our customers, both consumer and commercial, in terms of the ways that we can improve the experience. Just for those that aren't aware of what Recall is, really think about Recall as this extension of your memory. So if all of these AI capabilities are like agents almost to a certain degree within your device, think of Recall as that kind of memory agent for you. And it'll what it does is it actually takes snapshots throughout the day, depending on whatever kind of settings you have in place, and it'll adhere to certain privacy things that you've got in place. By default, it actually immediately removes things like banking information and certain security information. But it takes those snapshots throughout the day, and then at some given moment, you can go back and do a natural language search, or just be able to do like some quick prompts into the search bar to be able to find something. So let's say like I'm working on a PowerPoint right now about natural input. So maybe I've got a picture of someone's hand inking. Well, instead of having to remember the exact name of that file and where I stored it and who I worked with, I know that I did that, and Recall would store that information. So all I have to do is maybe do a quick search for hand holding a pen or someone drawing something, and it would recognize that image and it would pull it up on my search. So I have the ability to very easily recall a lot of the things that I've done, over a certain amount of time. And again, the nice thing is as an end user, I can control the amount of time that I store. I can make sure that, certain websites are blocked or blessed, depending on kind of the way that I want to do it. And I would say that, like, as we kind of talk today, that's probably the biggest evolution of the product, is just that sheer amount of control that we gave to end users, but also in the commercial space. So yeah, that's kind of my quick, 5 minutes.
I remember my first thought when I saw the first version of this was actually, wow, this is the coolest keylogger you can install on anybody's PC. So in the beginning, the biggest concern raised was about how can you control access to this data, and how can you exclude data from the collection that are being created during the day. So and maybe that's the reason why it was recalled. The recall get recalled, and you started to redesign and do something different on the setup of it, maybe.
Security was definitely one of the points of feedback. I think there's two parts to that story, and they play hand in hand. You have end user security and that kind of end user understanding and sense of to your point, making sure that the right things are being accessed. And then of course you have the organizational level of being able to control the feature in general and web. So if we start with that end user side, I think there was a lot of concern that like a remote person could theoretically get into your device and unlock it, and then basically get your entire history of whatever the computer's seen. Yeah, that's going to flag some concern, I think, for the watchdogs that are out there, and then even the general public. So I think there's a lot of work that's been done, especially on requiring basically a human to be, that's called, verified in front of the device. And so Windows Hello is a requirement for Recall. It's actually a part of the reason that Windows Hello is a requirement for Copilot Plus. And what we're doing there is, at that point, is we're basically verifying that the person that's in front of the computer is who they say they are. And we use biometrics to be able to do that, whether that's a fingerprint reader or facial recognition. And of course, you still want to have the right layers of security. So as you go through kind of setting it up and logging into the device, you're going to kind of add those layers of authentication as you're going through it. We also then encrypted the files. So instead of just relying on BitLocker as that kind of device level encryption, they're using a version of what we call PDE, or oh man, I'm forgetting what PDE stands for, but basically it's a file level encryption that encrypts on the fly. And so you provide this ability to not only encrypt at the device level, you're actually encrypting all the snapshots that are being saved on the go. And the only way to unlock that is actually use Windows Hello. And so even as actually IT, if I were to try to log in remotely and see what my end users are doing, we are as right now, we're not providing that capability just because we wanted to make sure that the end user is the one that's really in control of their data. And I think more specifically, just that provides that kind of modicum of privacy, in that sense of hey, this information is only staying on this device, and it's not going to be shared out to my company, Microsoft, third parties, and what have you. So
even if I am the local admin on the PC or that Alexander are using, I cannot see Alexander's stuff, right?
Nope. You are only allowed to see your own.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, it's even a requirement for what they call, what Microsoft call, I say what they call, because that's the Windows team, not the Surface team, but Windows Hello Enhanced Sign-in Security, so the ESS version, where it kind of keeps the integrity of the credential and biometrics in a virtual machine. So it requires an even more, a higher level of security of the Windows Hello than just the default Hello.
Cool. Does Copilot actually require ESS? That's a good question. I guess I could turn it off and find out if I wanted to. You have actually the ability to disable it, but obviously you lose what exactly you were just talking about, which is this isolation of the basically of the keys that Windows Hello creates. Wow, I don't, off the top of my head, I'm not exactly sure if that is a hard requirement, but it wouldn't surprise me, because it is, again, I think when it comes to any security in general, but definitely security coming from Windows, we're all about layers and multiple kind of moats, castles, whatever you want to call it, to make sure that if one level gets attacked, then another level is there to kind of protect it and kind of isolate it from the the core thing that you're trying to get to. So yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if ESS was a thing. Although I'm very curious to see how that is handled as we move into right now. I just as a random aside, we're pushing the ability to do Windows Studio effects through USB. So historically, I think we wanted to really control that data channel for things like Windows Studio effects. And I know that the Windows team announced in preview right now that you can use like third-party cameras, like USB-based cameras through Windows Studio Effects, which actually I'm really excited about because when I've got my kind of podcast or studio set up at home, I do use a webcam, which is it's easier for me to kind of move around the room and whatnot. And so I'm really excited for that. But I'm very curious to see if Recall and ESS goes hand in hand. I know for sure Windows Hello though is, but it wouldn't surprise me. Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me.
But when it comes to adoption, do we see any difference in commercial versus end user adoption? Olav mentioned this sounds like the most awesome keylogger in history, and a lot of commercial and companies are kind of worried how to enable this, and the end user are legitimately worried that what if my boss spy on me? Do you see any traction in the market for this feature?
Consumer, yeah, it's starting to pick up for sure. The big thing that I will say, and this is just even history in terms of working with companies myself, like the moment you have a tag of preview, it's game over. There's no one, like the commercial is just not going to adopt that en masse because a lot of industries don't even allow you to roll out preview features just because they want to make sure that the environment's stable for commercial. So I would say that the commercial adoption is very much still in that preview phase where a lot of people are kind of exploring what it means for their certain pockets of their organization to be able to use it, but it's en masse, it's not something that I would expect our commercial customers to start really adopting until that preview has been removed and we've taken entirely out of GA, or into GA.
I think this also will be a user-driven request because the recall itself is not an enterprise feature by design. It's designed to make one person more productive. So I think it will come down that people would ask to be able to enable it because they see they will do better work if they are possible to enable it. But I don't think company will say that we are going to use recall for everybody. There will be people saying that, hey, this recall feature would actually make me work more efficient. So I think there will be people asking for it before the company decide to use it.
Yeah, and actually, it's a good point that you bring up, Olav, which is like, even if an organization enables it, so if I go and set out a policy within group policy or through Intune or whatever, that basically enables recall to work on the device, there's actually no way for the end user to be required to use it today. It's still an opt-in option for the end user. So what happens is, next time you log in or at some point when you maybe like restart your device, you'll get prompted to say, hey, like, would you like to start using recall? And at that point, you can set it up and you can kind of walk through the entire experience of, making sure that Windows Hello is there and whatnot. And so it's very end user centric in terms of the way that we've designed the feature, just because to your point, we want to make sure that the end users are using it and that they're the ones that are opting into making that decision. I also think too, like as an end user, even in Microsoft, right, we had to go through the same kind of checks and balances to make sure that recall could get rolled out within our organization. And there's a lot of, things that I think that companies want to have an understanding of. And that is like, where does that data go? And does it reside locally on the device? Is there any way for us to be able to track things, et cetera, et cetera? And Microsoft is now starting to roll it out internally. So I think we'll, in a lot of ways, always be kind of the pioneers of our own tools. And so as Microsoft starts adopting it more broadly internally, across our employees, then I think we'll start seeing that externally from Microsoft a little bit more publicly. Yeah.
I'm really one of the features is that you notice the kind of recall capture icon down at the task menu, where you can see that it has paused because you have opened a certain set of tools, and solitaire, so just playing Windows games, that automatically kind of triggers that it doesn't capture. So if you open that, but pretty much every other application I've stumbled upon, it has that feature auto enabled, so it kind of captures it, but it kind of fades out if it has personal information, like you said. But is there a generic filter? Like, do you have to manually add applications, manually add websites, or are there built-in tools that kind of adds features like corporate internal websites or internal sites, so you can kind of bundle them?
Yeah. I probably should have prefaced at the beginning, while I know Recall really well, this is not my product. I am a Surface guy, but so this is very much from an end user, like a person that's been using Recall for a while perspective. But I also know the product pretty well because I do work pretty closely with that team when I get the chance. But there are some filters that are built in by default. So to your point, you've got things like banking information, personal identified information, DMR protection. So it won't recall any like movies or anything like that. Certain video games as well, as it's going to have that kind of DMR lens on it. So there are built-in filters that automatically just basically block the snapshot from happening, or blacks out the screen. By the way, you'll also notice that happens with click to do. So if you were to try to use click to do, which is I actually almost I use click to do all the time, and so I'm happy to talk about that here in a little bit. But both of them have that similar filter of there's just certain things that it's never going to take a screenshot of, and then you as the end user can add more if you want, or if you feel like certain things aren't coming through that you want, you can also basically force it to allow it to come through as well. Yeah, and that's all done.
I think I also read somewhere that the software developers can set something that it should not be recorded. I would guess that in the DMR kind of thing. So you can say that your type of software you will never record. So there will be tools available for it. So
yeah, actually, there's two different. Basically, not only two, but there's a couple different APIs that developers can take advantage of. One is what you just mentioned, which is that ability to basically black out the screen or kind of block any kind of screenshot capabilities from it, or snapshot capabilities. The other one is actually what do we call it? Like your basically like history tied into it. So PowerPoint's a really good example, which is if I'm looking in a PowerPoint, what's the value of me being able to open up or to see that kind of work that I was doing if I can't actually go back to that point? Because otherwise it's just like, oh, well, I was in PowerPoint. Well, I knew I was in PowerPoint in the first place. But what I want to be able to do is I actually want to be able to open up the PowerPoint I was working on. And that requires a tie back into the system. It's a one-way tie. So basically the way that it works is the PowerPoint gets the signal of which like slide it needs to go to, or which deck it needs to go to. And so similarly, if we had some other application that's out there, they could tie that API into the Recall capability to say, hey, this snapshot was basically taken either A for this application, or A for this application at this time, or for this file that I'm working on. So some of those ties are also something that a developer could take advantage of, just to make it easier for people to get back into their applications. Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, Click to Do have left preview, so that's in a general availability. And do you see a high traction adoption on that? Because the workflow of Click to Do is technically that Click to Do is a user invoked process where their recall just goes automatically in the background.
I actually don't have any official adoption rates at all coming. I can say anecdotally, it's something that we at Surface and on the Surface team have been really kind of pushing across our team. It is just a phenomenal tool. I think it's almost like one of the unsung heroes of Recall, or of Copilot Plus PC experiences, if you ask me. If you haven't used it, super easy to invoke if you're on a Copilot Plus PC. Literally, it's either Windows Q, it's Windows click on the mouse, and actually part of the reason we like to talk about it with Surface is it's a swipe in, a swipe from right to left, and that'll actually turn on the Copilot interface as well, or enable a Copilot. And I bring that up because we actually worked with the Windows team, so the Surface team worked with the Windows team to build that capability. So we kind of like to use our own tools from that case. But the other side of it too is it's actually a really phenomenal tool to be able to find things. I think of course you could always just Control F if you're on if you're on a web page or in some kind of application or something. But if there's not a find functionality, snapshot, or Click to Do provides that ability to really find anything that's on the screen. So you have the ability to just find pictures and words and everything, again, using natural language. But we'll take it a step further, which is now I have the ability to not just find it, I can summarize that information, I can bulletize that information. And by the way, that looks very much like Copilot, and it's because we actually took some of that Copilot knowledge and we built it into Click to Do, but we built it into where it's running entirely locally. So whenever you summarize something using Click to Do, it's all done locally on the NPU, just like Click to Do itself is. But speaking about Copilot, it's also a great example, in my opinion, of what I'm kind of talking about with this idea of hybrid AI, where there's going to be things that live locally on the device and there's going to be things that live in the cloud. And so Copilot is very much a cloud-driven workload because it needs access to the graph. It needs access to the vast wealth of information that's on the internet and everything like that. And so, but there's certain features that we can kind of do locally using local AI models. And Click to Do is a good example of going the opposite direction, which was we take everything from Click to Do, and normally that runs almost entirely locally. But if I want to maybe highlight this text that's in front of me here, and maybe I don't know too much about it, maybe I want some more information on it, I can right click on that and it'll send a prompt to either M365 Copilot or Copilot, and that way the Copilot will actually run that search for me. And so that then uses the cloud intelligence to be able to take care of that for you. So I think a lot of cool stuff coming with Copilot, or sorry, with Click to Do. And I literally use Click to Do, like, I don't know, a handful of times a day at a minimum. Like, it's just one of those things I use all the time.
If I'm not mistaken, one of the announcements for the Windows 11 Insider was that there's now a Click to Do add-in for Excel tables to convert tables and data and kind of query data directly in Excel. Because if there's one Microsoft product that kind of still suffers for not having Copilot integrated that well, it is Excel. So now Click to Do gives you that value on top.
Yeah, I think our entire Copilot in Office, or M365 apps, I should say, experience is kind of evolving right now. I don't know if you saw the announcement that we're looking at adopting Anthropic models for bits of M365. So I'm actually really curious and excited to see what that means for the inbuilt Copilot experience, because I think, contextually, it's always useful if the Copilot is basically as close to whatever you're working on as possible. But absolutely, the ability to take Recall and do some of that like light work on top of it is super handy as we kind of add layers and add different ways to access that intelligence and that information. But I'm definitely curious to see where we go with the Anthropic adoption, because that's the first one I've actually messed with outside of Copilot, to be honest. I've been a little bit apprehensive to use anything other than our own models, but I did kind of explore with Anthropic, and I think it's an interesting take for us to go down that route, and I'm super excited for it.
I'm most interested to see how the implementation of Anthropic will be in the different market and regions. We know that different market and regions have different regulations and kind of bureaucracy you need to have to approve, to use it for privacy and whatnot, but also for quality in language. I've been using the Copilot for the personal Copilot for quite a while, and speaking to it in Norwegian works. The problem, and my take on that is that worked in the US for 10 years. So we kind of lag a couple of generations behind in different markets. But what are your take on that, Olav? Do you have any expectations?
I think this is the so-called US bug that they suspect that everybody will speak English, and English with an American accent. So it doesn't work that well on Norwegian, the Copilot, because my parents-in-law started to use Copilot after my request, and the first thing they notice is the microphone button. So they start to talk to it. I always use it with typing, and then it's really smooth. But they started to talk to it, and it answered back in Swedish, in different languages, and different regional dialects and everything. So, and it was different from question to question. So it's not trained on Norwegian, and especially the Bergen and Askøy dialect. So it's not that good outside the English and preferable American or UK maybe dialect, but. It's getting better than it have been, but still, I think they have some mile to go. I never talk to Copilot because I know that I will get annoyed, so I type in. But I'm looking forward to the day when I can talk to it, because you have a quick question, and a quick question take much more time to type than ask.
It's kind of interesting how you mentioned that, because a week ago I enabled the Sonos audio assistants for 3 of my speakers. So when I'm home, I always talk in my natural language, in Norwegian, except when I'm in the bathroom. Then it's always like, hey, and I go speak to. So it and if I try to do in any other language where I tried, it never works. So. That is one of my, if there's anything to add more models, I'm really excited to see how this will work in France and Germany and Norway, Sweden, etc. Just to see how it kind of, will this be the boost to adopt Windows AI features or Microsoft AI features outside of US?
One of my concern also is that if it's so linked to English, will it miss all the really good Dutch, French, Norwegian articles with content, because it figure out that I don't want to translate before I sum up everything. So it will actually just, okay, this is Norwegian, let's do something else than Norwegian and French and so on. So you might actually lose some value in the answer, because we need regional answers, because if we are talking about the dynamics, for instance, there will be settings that different for Norwegian than the English one, and regulation and stuff like that, and you might miss a lot of important information when it doesn't translate and put in everything in the base of your knowledge.
Yeah, that reminds me of one story. Yeah, that reminds me of one story, because there was one German website that had solved a problem that was a EU specific problem. And it was impossible to find when you used Bing and Google and all of that, because they all search for most related articles, and the most related articles were in English. This blog post was in German.
Interesting. So we've got localized, regionalized issues. Yeah, I think. Look, I'm not one to necessarily speculate, but I do know that we continue to improve these experiences. We do continue to evolve these models. Even the local translate models that come with Copilot Plus PCs for live translation and whatnot, those continue to evolve, just because, yeah, we definitely want to make that experience better. To your point, if it's only in English, we're only capturing such a small market, and so we've got to be able to expand that market globally. So I'm definitely curious to see how we evolve that. But I think the take, Olav, that you mentioned around is it actually missing critical information because it is only looking basically for the easy button, which is it can recognize English and kind of take care of that. My understanding is that Copilot in particular runs regionally, and so there should be some regional triggers to make it a little bit more contextually aware of where it is and regionally aware of where it is. Obviously, if it's running into issues, it's not perfect, but that's an interesting take, because it is still backed into the Bing search, and so if Bing is running into that problem, then Copilot to a certain degree will also run into that problem. So that's an interesting one. Yeah, definitely. Look, I'll always say, like, and Alex knows this all the time, like, please flag it, please add feedback, please send it back, because I think a lot of people don't know what they don't know, and when it comes to a company our size, we definitely will miss things if our customers don't help us find it.
I had a really funny experience the other way around, because I recorded a Norwegian meeting, and then after the recording, Copilot asked me if I want to sum it up. and it summed it up and gave me an English speak that was spot on. So it understand everything we said on Norwegian, but the audio playback of the summarization was in English, but it was still spot on. So it did the translation, it understand everything, but it wasn't able to give me the sum up in Norwegian, but spot on English. That was a funny way of actually.
I mean, Alex was there. You were there? I think you were in Amsterdam, weren't you? Didn't you meet up with me in Amsterdam? When I had someone come up on stage and our local translation, our live translation definitely said some interesting things. I think going from one language to English is definitely where our strengths are right now, for sure. That is opening up. Chinese is kind of the next one, which I think is actually fascinating to me that we chose Chinese as that target language, because talk about like not an easy language to translate. But Chinese, English to Chinese, or other language to Chinese is definitely the one, at least from a local perspective. And all these models are, I think, interrelated, whether it's Microsoft developing the model ourselves, or if we're using something from, OpenAI or Anthropic or whomever else that's out there. But that's I think we'll start to see that evolve over the year, and as people use it too. I mean, like, we're not going to train based off of your data, but I think as we get our teams locally and regionally to be able to train that information, it'll become more and more something that like just gets better for the general public too.
You mentioned that we should give you feedback, and it's kind of hard to be Microsoft and not knowing what you're missing out on, but I use the feedback hub in Windows a lot, so the Windows F. But is there any other channels? And how do we know that you received the feedback, and how long does normally a feedback take to provide a change? Is it a year, 2, 3?
No, well, it depends. From a hardware perspective, just pure surface, like some of these hardware decisions are made pretty well in advance. So I think, those things, those could take anywhere from, 6 to 18 months and up. Frankly, if we're doing significant hardware changes, because we've got to order the parts, we've got to source things, you got to, change basically how it's being manufactured. So hardware itself has a completely different timeline. Software, on the other hand, is pretty quick. I think we got to go through bugs and everything, but you'll see stuff go into preview, I mean, within 3 to 6 months. It depends on the platform, I will say. Like when I was working on Power Platform, especially.
I think Chauncey got a feedback on Teams. There's something happened at least. Yeah. So.
Well, it seems like maybe he met the US bug.
Let's see here. There have been some interesting Teams bugs recently, definitely. I've had the same problem we just experienced myself, where the PC simply just collapsed. Yeah. And I think we're back.
Nothing like a good old coffee break for Teams for me this morning. Seems like Teams also needs its coffee to kick in. What were we talking about?
Power Platform are about 3 to 6 months.
Yeah. So I think in terms of just kind of preview features in general, once they recognize it's something that they can build in code, of course it has to go through priority. So that's the other thing too, is like we do get feedback. So it's not that we're not entirely unaware. I mean, obviously we can see feedback and we can collate it. The reason I think feedback in particular is so important is the more people that provide feedback, the easier it is for a team to prioritize it. If only 2 or 3 people are asking for it, that's not going to be a priority. I mean, we are still a business. We still have to kind of add our dollars and resources behind it. And so the more people that are providing feedback towards a certain function, which is, by the way, in the feedback tool, why you get the option to choose if someone else is already having that issue, because it's easier for us to tie those things together versus having to kind of pull multiple sources together. One of the reasons, that's not the only reason, but as more people provide that feedback, it helps us prioritize it. And so, I think there are certain features that you'll see come to light pretty quickly versus some of them. Honestly, it's generally either there's not enough feedback to provide, like to justify it, or maybe engineering is impossible. Maybe some of the asks is like, astronomical, and it's not a huge thing for us. So I think the language one, though, I think that'll kind of naturally happen over time, just because one of the other things that I think you had kind of mentioned earlier in our discussions was this idea of what we announced last Thursday, which is Windows 11. All of these PCs are basically becoming AI PCs, or this idea of Windows 11 now is like the PC you can talk to, and that's a shout out to Copilot on Windows, and the ability to either say, hey Copilot, or push and hold the Windows or the Copilot key if you've got an AI PC or Copilot Plus PC, and the ability to start having that conversation. And so, because that is such a central part of our future, I definitely expect the models to improve in terms of regional languages, localization, and everything.
All right. So that was a great summary. And I'll encourage every of our listeners and viewers to try out Recall if they have a Copilot Plus PC or any PC that's capable of doing that. And give us a feedback in the chat or commentary on LinkedIn, and also in the feedback hub of Windows to see if there's anything we can improve.
Exactly. Perfect.
Perfect.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Alex. Thanks, Olav. Always a pleasure talking to you, gentlemen, and happy to join whenever I can.
Yeah. See you around.
Thanks, guys.